Welcome to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life, with psychologist and author of over 75 books, Dr. Barry Weinhold. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Get Real, How to Live a More Authentic Life with Dr. Barry Weinhold. My name is Ben Barber, and today we have a very, very, very special show for you. So before we bring on Dr. Weinhold, I want to introduce, once again, our co-host for the show, my partner in crime, Ashley Ross. Ashley, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Excellent. That's enough out of you. Let's get to Dr. Barry Weinhold. Dr. Weinhold, you're releasing another new book.
Yeah, you're going to have to change the intro.
I know. It's not over 75 anymore.
This is my 80th book. And I don't know how I got to write that many books, but I did. I got on a roll and I couldn't stop.
That's great.
And incidentally, I think I have 17 titles on my desktop of books that I still want to write.
We need 3 more
to get 100.
We need 3 more. You need to get to 100.
I think I'll make it.
All right, I'm excited. So yeah. We're gonna ask you some questions today. I hope that's okay. We're gonna ask you some hard-hitting questions, maybe not so hard-hitting, about the new book.
Well, that'll be great, and I'm feeling very good because it's the end of March and fly fishing season starts April 1st. I'm counting the days.
There you go.
Get out and slap the water again.
I'm excited to hear more about that. All right, Ashley, let's dive into the book.
Sure. So first question, why did you write it? What motivated you to write this book?
Oh boy, that's an interesting story. It started with I was my friend of mine who's a therapy phobic, and when I get together and have dinner or lunch with him, I tell him some of the things I'm doing with my clients, and he said, I could sure use that, but I'm never going to go into therapy. So why don't you write a book for people like me that are therapy phobic but need to know more about their psychological processes. So that was the first impetus, and I've been thinking about it. And I kind of started an outline on the book after talking to him for a number of times and him bringing that topic up repeatedly. And then on the 4th of July, I work for BetterHelp and see online clients, and many of them are international. So I thought I'll just stay active today and I'll get some international clients, which I did. And then I had a break. I thought, well, I'll just go out and watch a little TV and see what's happening in the world out there. And turned on CNN, and they were reporting another mass shooting on a parade in Highland Park, Illinois. And I happen to know people who live in Highland Park, and they often tell me it's the safest place in the world to live. And so I said, how can that happen in Highland Park, Illinois? And I got really upset. I said, every time I turn on the TV, I hear about another mass shooting. I am sick and tired of this. When is it going to stop? And I started pacing and talking to myself and getting upset and angry more and more. And then I thought, wait a minute here, Barry. Why are you so upset about this? I'm using my own techniques on myself here. And I thought, well, I don't know exactly, but I think that I feel powerless and helpless to do anything to change it. But then I thought, talking to myself, I said, Barry, you're not powerless and helpless. There's things you can do. You can talk on the podcast you're doing about the causes of mass shooters, which I've been doing the whole month. And then you can also and also in thinking about it and then getting more information about this shooting, the shooter had 2 encounters with the law where he should have been put on a 72-hour hold, psychiatric hold, and he wasn't. So it showed me that the whole mental health system is part of the problem. It's broken. And so I said, well, maybe I need to write a book that meets the needs of my friend and also gives people the tools that help them improve their own mental health. And so those were the main reasons I wrote the book. And also the fact that I've been having a great deal of success with my clients. And I tell all my clients, my job is to teach you everything I know so you can do therapy on yourself. And that's the goal I have with every client. So I said, well, gee, why couldn't that same goal be put into a book of all the things that I've done with my clients that work, and put it in such a simple form that anyone could pick it up and use it and become their own therapist. And so those are the two objectives of the book are, first of all, to help people increase their psychological intelligence, and the second is to help them become their own therapist. Those are kind of noble goals, but
they're big. They're definitely big goals.
I mean, I'm having success with my clients. I
Mhm.
just got an email from a client I haven't seen in maybe a year, and he's telling me about the progress he's made after he stopped therapy with me. And he's using the tools that I gave him, and he's doing his own therapy now.
That's
So
wonderful.
I know it works. And so what I've tried to do in the book is to make it as simple as possible. And I do that with my clients too.
Mhm.
This is not totally rocket science, but it does require you to understand the psychological processes that are at work in you, and so that you can make good decisions about how to handle those. And so that's how I put it in the book too.
Well, that leads into my next question really well. What do people need to know in order to become their own therapist?
Yeah, well, most people, and I don't blame them, because wherever they've been taught, don't know anything about how their psychological processes work. And often they make up things that are not true. For example, when people are in the middle of something and they get triggered by a memory of something from the past, what do? Well, the first thing they usually do is try to calm down and not have any just kind of intense feelings going on in their body at the moment from the memory of something from their past. And so they either self-medicate with alcohol, drugs, or sex, or any other addiction, or they do whatever they can to just calm down and make the feelings go away. That doesn't do any good, because anything that happens from the past that isn't finished will continue to repeat itself. You will continue to be triggered by that until you figure out what's going on with that. So I've developed a 4-step model for people, a very simple model. It says, okay, you're being triggered here, and how's that affecting your life right now? That's step one. Is it really disrupting your life in a way that you want to do something about it? And usually the answer is yes. And then, okay, the next thing you need to do is pay attention to the feelings you're having and see if you can locate where those feelings might have occurred earlier in your life in some learning experience that didn't get finished. And sometimes, in fact, I've had outstanding success by just asking people, okay, what are you feeling now? Close your eyes, anchor it in your body. Where is it in your body? They say it's here, or it's in their belly, or wherever. And then I say, okay, now open your eyes and close them again, anchoring with that feeling, and tell me the first time you ever felt that way. And they know it. I've had clients within 2 seconds tell me exactly where it came from. Some people aren't as clear, but they know it happened sometime when they were a child. They sometimes can identify the age. I had one guy who identified the exact time and age it happened, and the whole situation had happened. Within 2 seconds, he had it. And it was basically the unfinished business that was just totally disrupting his life. And so that's step two. Then the third step, which it can be tricky, is see if you can figure out what was unfinished about that makes it continue to show up in your life. And the usual kind of suspects on that one are you didn't get to say what you needed to say in that situation. And maybe it would be may have that have been a prudent action, because if you'd have spoken up and said what was on your mind, it might have gotten you in more trouble. So or you didn't get to do something that you needed to do in that situation. I mean, sometimes it's just to get away from the situation and you weren't able to. And then the other two things is, what did you need from the other people that you didn't get? Either what did you need them to say certain things? Did you need them to do? Did you need them to comfort you? And maybe you didn't get any comfort from them. You just got criticism or abuse. And so those are generally the missing pieces that have to be filled. And then the fourth step is to begin to look at what you can do right now to finish whatever was unfinished about that. And usually there are plenty of things you can do because you have more resources now than you did then. And so you can figure out a way to. I mean, a lot of my clients, even today, because of the unfinished business, they don't speak up, and they've lost their voice in situations where they need to have a voice to protect themselves, and they don't. They just sit there and take it again. And so that's the one thing I notice is that a lot of my clients need to get their voice back and be able to speak up when they need to protect themselves. And so it's like boundary setting. So anyway, that's the basis for the simple formula that I put forth in the book. And then to help people with that 4-step model, I put an online workbook with the print book. So in every chapter, at the end of the chapter, there's a link to that chapter in a workbook, which has self-quizzes, self-assessment tools, and case examples about how to better understand and make that happen in your life. So a lot of resources in there. Every chapter, and there's 40 chapters in the book, 41 actually. The last chapter is my story. And so I always had my story as an example, because I mean, everything I ever did for and continue to do for clients, and that I use whatever worked for me first. And if it worked for me, then I'm willing to try it with others. If it didn't work for me, I throw it away. I don't use it with anybody.
Well, and I think that helps people kind of find form a trust, with you, and know that the content of the book is coming from a genuine place, and a place where you've been there and you've experienced the same things. And so it's different than when you're listening to, let's say, a coach that's never actually done the thing. It's harder to kind of feel safe in that space, especially when we're evaluating such big things that have a big tie to us. It's nice to know that we're going through it with a concept that's been created by somebody that's already been in our shoes. It definitely helps a lot.
So the way in the book, the way I help people get started is, in the first chapter, there's a self-quiz, and right in the book, and it's also in the workbook if you want. And all of the things in the workbook are downloadable PDFs, so you can download them and take these self-quiz separate from having to do it in the book, and that makes it easier. But the first self-quiz is how to become your own self-therapist, and there's 36 items about if you became your own self-therapist and were successful, these are the outcomes you can expect. And then each of those items in that self-quiz becomes a chapter in the book. And then that's connected to a workbook with all the other self-quizzes and case examples to elaborate and help that person to make better use of that item. And I ask everybody in that self-quiz to rate themselves from 1 to 10. 1 would be, I don't know much about that. And 10 would be, I got that one mastered. Don't have to even read the book about that one. And then I say, okay, after you've filled out this inventory and rated yourself on each of them, the items where you marked yourself 5 or below is where you start. So you go to those items in the book where you rated yourself at 5 or below, and that's where you start working.
I like that approach a lot. That helps.
It's a very simple approach.
But it personalizes it, so you can feel like you're digging into the things that need the most attention right away.
Right.
That's very helpful. So next question then, I guess, kind of leads into that, similar to the quiz and what you're getting from the quiz is, how is the PsyQ different from EQ?
Oh, well, PsyQ is much more comprehensive than EQ. I mean, psychological intelligence involves a lot of how our cognitive processes work, as well as our emotional processes work. And so it really is a far, far more comprehensive look at our own personal psychology than EQ is a very nice book, and it has some good things in it. And I just basically took it 2 or 3 steps further.
That's great. And I think too, again, especially when you're doing it on your own, it's nice to have a comprehensive viewpoint because everybody's different and everybody kind of approaches problems differently. So when you're looking at a wider viewpoint of, like you said, taking into effect the cognitive way that you're approaching this too, I think that helps a wider range of people to understand how to approach it. So that's wonderful. So what do you think prevents people from bettering their understanding in their own personal psychology?
Because they never were taught how it works.
Right.
And so in many cases, they're still novices at understanding how their psychological processes work. And the book lays it out pretty simply how it works. And I believe the natural learning style of human beings is simply to repeat everything that we ever experienced in our life that didn't get finished for whatever reason. It just keeps showing up until we get it finished. And that's the work of Jean Piaget, the Swiss psychologist. And his research showed that that's how people learn.
And I think you've talked on the podcast before as well, too, that, even when you look at our current school systems or the mental health groups, that this is definitely a lack of something that we should have. This is something we should be learning in school. We should be teaching our kids a lot of these things. And there's such a big gap where that is concerned.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
it's a problem.
We're just operating off of whatever information we picked up here and there, and off of it, a lot of it's inaccurate. And also, the other thing that makes it difficult is that everything that we ever experienced from the time we were conceived until now is stored in our body memory. However, only about 5% of that is accessible at any given time consciously. The rest of it is subconscious and unconscious. So in the book, there's a lot of ways that I suggest that people can access the subconscious and the unconscious. And actually, responding to a time when you get triggered by some memory is a perfect opportunity for that, because that's basically your body memory saying, hey, pay attention to this.
Mm-hmm.
This is not finished and it needs your attention.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to ignore it, distract yourself from it, or self-medicate, you have to then start asking you the 4 questions that I have in the book about how to find out why that's unfinished and how to finish it.
Yeah, I love that. I actually read in a book the other day about sitting with your feelings instead of trying to push them away or shield them. You just invite them to sit next to you for the day and
that's exactly what's happening in the book is that when you get triggered, obviously you have feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Usually they're the feelings related to the original incident, so they're pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
It can be disruptive to us, and our natural inclination is, well, let's get rid of these feelings. Let's calm
Right.
down.
Right.
Well, that's okay, but it doesn't solve the problem. And it's an
Mm.
opportunity to solve the problem. And that's why I'm saying that's one thing that we need to understand about our psychological processes is that
Mhm.
whatever we're getting triggered by is something that's unfinished and it's trying to get our attention.
Mhm. I love it. Okay, so next question. You talked a little bit in the beginning, but how is the low PsyQ related to mass shootings? You said that was
Well,
why you started, but kind of getting
yeah,
into
as I could go on forever about that, but basically, a lot of the people, the men who end up, and it is all men that are mass shooters, not women. And I covered that earlier this month in the podcast, and that why the way we raise boys might be contributing to the fact why these men eventually become mass shooters. And clearly they are people with a lot of trauma, a lot of childhood abuse, neglect, uh, frequently, and they don't know how to process that, and so they act it out by in violent ways frequently. And so I think the more that we could teach those young men and boys what their psychological processes are about and how to handle them in a nonviolent ways, we would have fewer mass shooters. So I think it's as simple as that. It's a very complex problem, but I think that's my simple answer to it is that we just simply have to do a better job of how we
Mhm.
raise our boys to make sure that they don't become mass shooters later in life.
Definitely. As a mom of two boys, I definitely feel that one a lot of um, feeling the pressure of the way society looks at the way that you raise boys and trying to do better
Yeah,
as a mom.
it's not an easy job, and I don't blame
No.
parents. They're doing the best they can.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in this country, I've lived in two other countries, and both of which were countries that had much, much more support for families than we do in this country. They have
Yeah.
family leave, they have home visitation, they have lots of resources available to new parents to help them uh, manage the job, which is a very difficult job. It's
Hmm.
but it isn't necessarily doesn't require a PhD. It just requires some simple understandings of
Hmm.
again their own psychological processes, so that they can better understand the psychological processes of their children.
Yep. Definitely. It's made a huge difference for me in the last year. Even just being able to chat alongside you and listen to a lot of the insights that you have has made a huge difference to the way that I approach parenting. So thank you for sharing all that information. It's
Mhm.
I invite everybody to not only that listen to the podcast, but there are endless amounts of resources that you put out both on the website and in other places in the books. So always makes a huge difference just to start creating the awareness.
Yeah,
So yeah, that kind of again leads into the next question. Do you mind giving some examples of some of the benefits they get from the new book?
sure. The item number one, uh, and again, people rate themselves from 1 to 10 on this. It's show up and tell your truth. And do you walk your talk and are radically present in everything you do in your life? Can you speak your truth, be vulnerable and transparent when you want to or need to? The biggest fear is often that you'll be vulnerable and uh, somehow that'll cause you to have something bad happen to you. Well, I'm saying, no, it's really important to be able to be vulnerable. And 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 this one shows up as a major block in people's lives because what people do if they can't show up and tell their truth is they become people pleasers. And so then the focus is out there about how do I behave in such a way to please these other people? And I dig deeply into that one, where that comes from, why that's become so important to people, and what you do to change that.
I'm really looking forward to that myself, having I consider myself now an in recovery people pleaser. But also I see the signs in my son from the way that I parented in the beginning. So I think we both need these steps. So I'm looking forward to getting the book myself.
Yeah, there's a lot on that in that chapter about it. Once you recognize what the problem of people pleasing is, what do you do about it? How do you fix that? How do you change it?
Because it's definitely like a almost autonomic response a lot of the times, that even I'll be midway through answering something to someone and realize that I'm doing it and have to kind of like check myself. So, but it's just once like you said, you can then kind of invite those feelings in, and once you understand them more, it just makes a huge difference.
There might be times when you're meeting somebody for the new for the first time, and you want to do and say things that help you build a relationship with them. But if you know you're doing that, I guess that's the most important thing, is consciousness. So you're doing things consciously or unconsciously.
Yes, exactly. The word for me this year is intentionality. Am I doing things with intention that's true to myself? So thank you for all the insights over the last few months. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read the book. So thank you so much. Any other things you wanted to share with us about the book?
I think if the book seems to catch on, I think I may create an online course on the book.
Ooh, very exciting.
That would help people who are interested in using the book, but still having some struggles with it, that I think an online course might help them even further. So that's,
I think so too.
That's in the cooker.
Wonderful. You're muted, Ben.
I think that sounds like a fantastic idea. Thank you guys so much. Ashley, wonderful, insightful questions. Dr. Weinhold, fantastic as always. Do we have a release date in mind for the book?
It's in the final stages, and I should have a book in my hand within days.
Excellent. Well, stay tuned to all of the socials, and of course circle.org for all of that information. And you'll be the first to know. If you're a listener of this show, a watcher of this show, you'll be the first to know when that book is ready to drop. What are we talking about next month?
Well, I'm going to go back to digging into my top 20 list of the most badass, stupid psychological beliefs that people have that get them in trouble, and see if I can help people understand that these beliefs just don't work anymore. They might have worked at some point, but they don't work anymore.
Excellent. Well, that's good, because so far I have all 20 of those.
Yeah, most people do. I mean, it's I searched around looking for the most common ones that I found, and I started with 10. I thought, oh, that'll be enough, and then I thought of more, and I ended up with 20.
Well, that makes sense. It'll probably grow even more.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you want more information on what we talked about today or anything else from the podcast, any other resources, check out circle.org. Click the link in the description of this episode. Ashley, thank you so much. Dr. Weinhold, thank you as always. We'll see you guys all next week.
All right. Take care. Have a good week.
Bye for now.
Bye.
For more information, please visit the Colorado Institute for Conflict Resolution and Creative Leadership at CICRCL.org or click the link in the show notes.